Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We will now proceed to the panel discussion 2 on BIMSTEC country perspective. The chairperson of the session is Major General A.N.M. Muniruzzaman, President, Bangladesh Institute of Peace and Security Studies. Major General, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sylvia. We are about to start the second and the last working session of today. And we are getting 3 more countries' perspectives in this session from 3 member countries of BIMSTEC. For that, we have a panel of excellent speakers. And they will be Mr. Faiz Sobhan, the Senior Research Director, Bangladesh Enterprise Institute, or BEI, from Bangladesh. We have then Professor Lwin from the Department of Management Studies, Yangon University of Economics, giving the Myanmar country perspective. And we have Dr. Sathaporn, who is the Associate Professor in the Department of International Business, Logistics and Transport, Faculty of Commerce and Accountancy, Thammasat University in Thailand. So we are in for a very informative session with some excellent speakers to deliberate on some of the key issues of BIMSTEC as we have been hearing since morning. As the Secretary General mentioned today, the 4th summit recently concluded in Kathmandu gave the theme of what BIMSTEC is all about. And truly, it is towards a peaceful, prosperous, and sustainable Bay of Bengal region. The Bay of Bengal, as you all agree with me, is a key geoeconomic and a geostrategic location of the world. With the prospect of the Indo-Pacific strategy coming into action, with BRI making strides, the Indian Ocean region has taken new impetus, both in terms of strategy and geoeconomics, and therefore, the Bay of Bengal occupies a key location in that ocean. Therefore, any aspects or any littorals around the Bay of Bengal occupies a special significance in terms of the world economy, world trade, and the geostrategic understanding. It is with that end, the BIMSTEC has been now rejuvenated. We now have a secretariat based in Bangladesh. We now have a very forward-looking dynamic Secretary General. We have just recently concluded a summit in Kathmandu with hoping for a next summit in Colombo in next 2 years. So therefore, everything is looking brighter for the prospect of BIMSTEC. I only hope that we can sustain the spirit that we have now generated, because in the context of South Asia and Southeast Asia, we sometimes have not kept up the spirit that we generate. But I'm also happy to report to you that the Kathmandu Declaration that came at the end of the summit has brought out some significant aspects of where BIMSTEC wants to go. Notably amongst them is the prospect of creation of a BIMSTEC Development Fund. The summit has also agreed that it certainly needs to empower and make the Secretariat more functional with better staffing and better financing. As the Secretary General also mentioned to you, it has also identified that perhaps the 14 focus areas of BIMSTEC is perhaps too long a menu for people to digest. So therefore, Thailand has come up with a suggestion of 5 pillars of BIMSTEC, which may be the way to go in the future. And there is certainly a suggestion for a BIMSTEC permanent working committee that will work out a rules of procedure or ROPs for BIMSTEC mechanism. So we are all set to make a journey for BIMSTEC that can be very worthwhile for the region. With that brief introduction, I will now invite our first panelist for this afternoon's workshop session, Mr. Faiz Sobhan from Bangladesh Enterprise Institute. Each of the panelists will have 20 minutes to speak, and then we shall move on to the question and answer session. Faiz, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted the clicker for the PowerPoint.
Do you have a clicker?
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're all still awake. I'm trying to remain awake, so I had a strong coffee. But anyway, I'll give you hopefully a short presentation, short and hopefully sweet presentation on BIMSTEC and Bangladesh, country perspective. So we, of course, heard from some of the other member countries, and the story of Bangladesh and BIMSTEC, or story of Bangladesh in terms of the role it has played in regionalism, if we can call it that, has been a long and interesting story. So this is, if you like, the structure of my presentation. And I start with a little bit about, discuss a bit about regionalism and, of course, the various aspects of BIMSTEC, and especially Bangladesh and BIMSTEC, and the areas that it's involved in, and concluding with challenges and opportunities and the way forward. So I like this quote by Mr. Jayasuriya, which I think sums up the concept of regionalism quite well, where he says it's a set of cognitive practices shaped by language, political discourse, through creation of concepts, metaphors, analogies, which determines how a region is defined. And in the case of Bangladesh, we've always been, if you like, at the forefront of regionalism, or regional, if you like, cooperation and activities linked to regionalism, and as well as sub-regional initiatives. So as you can see here, we are very much involved with the genesis and creation of SARC, which came about in 1985, but actually the roots of it were laid in the 70s, so much so that a concept paper by officers at our foreign ministry was published in the late 70s. But be that as it may, SARC came about on December 8, 1985. But as we all know, progress has not been very satisfactory in these past 33 years. We then also were quite strongly involved with SAPTA, and then the SARC growth quadrangle, which Bangladesh also mooted and was firmly behind. And that also goes back a little over 2 decades. And then, of course, we had BCIM in '99, which actually started as the Yunnan Initiative. And Bangladesh, a think tank called CPD, was very much involved with the genesis of that, or mooting that idea. And then, of course, we come to SAFTA from 2004. And then BIMSTEC, as we all know, has been around for a little over 20 years. And we've heard from the morning how much progress or lack of progress it's made, but how there is a lot of promise and prospect for BIMSTEC in the years ahead, especially with the recently concluded Kathmandu summit. But it is obviously a unique bloc, and Bangladesh has been a firm supporter of it, because it is a platform or a bridge between South Asia and Southeast Asia. And obviously, we do have members from both sides, even though there are only 2 Southeast Asian members. But nevertheless, it is a good vehicle for boosting economic cooperation in the Bay of Bengal. And it is a unique organization primarily, as I see it, for 2 reasons. One is that it represents one of the most diverse regions in the world, with an abundance of large natural resources. And second, it does provide a platform for intra-regional cooperation, because these are, if you like, BIMSTEC in a sense is a subset of SARC and ASEAN. But again, a reminder that, would we have BIMSTEC today were it not for SARC, or, the foundations of SARC, which were set over 3 decades ago. But when you look at BIMSTEC, progress has obviously been quite slow or painfully slow, because just to give you a good example, in terms of summits, there's just been 4 summits in the span of 21 years, which is, quite remarkable, considering there's so much country interest, or the members have expressed so much interest, but often they don't want to move forward for various reasons, both due to domestic compulsions and otherwise. But I think BIMSTEC also has an issue with carving out its actual identity, or what its actual role or functions are as a regional grouping. You see, you have this alphabet soup of regional groupings. We know about BBIN, BCIM, SARC obviously started it all, and then you have BIMSTEC, and then there's the Asian Highway Corridor and a few others. But it's all well and good, but these have to be proper functional organizations with a sense of purpose and pragmatism. Otherwise, what's the point of having such groupings? But BIMSTEC now has taken on an even more prominent role, and the South Asian leaders who represent, or the BIMSTEC leaders who represent this organization, are sort of showing themselves to be a bit more proactive on how it sees or wants to see BIMSTEC. Just to give you a few facts and figures, we heard about this in the morning, that it is home to over 1.5 billion people, comprising 22% of the world's population. Combined GDP, very impressive, nearly 3 trillion, or 2.8 to be exact, with nearly $800 billion worth of market size. And intra-regional trade potential lies at 77 billion, which is also quite an impressive figure. And also, if you look at the economic growth of each of the countries, it's quite impressive. If you just look at Bangladesh alone, we've averaged over 6% growth for over 20 years, nearly 7.5% for current fiscal year, one of the fastest growing economies in the world. India is also there, and obviously we also know about the excellent growth shared by Sri Lanka, Thailand, Nepal, Myanmar also, of course. So to quote from the language of what BIMSTEC stands for, as you can see, it's there to promote peace, stability, and prosperity, and it obviously highlights the issue of the abundance of natural resources and human resources, and the fact that there's geographical contiguity and rich historical links and cultural heritage. I think that's one aspect we tend to sometimes overlook. We focus more on, if you like, the issue of resources, or how it can be a revenue-generating platform. But tied into all of that, obviously, is our rich culture and history, which goes back thousands of years. And I'm sorry, but you can't see it here, but essentially those were the initial areas highlighted at the second ministerial meeting, and the 8th ministerial meeting highlighted these further areas of cooperation. So obviously the objective here being to make the best possible use of those available resources and boost cooperation in those areas. So as a regional platform, BIMSTEC stands to solve problems through interregional and intra-regional cooperation. So that mechanism does exist. And we've all heard about Prime Minister Modi's Act East policy, which also ties into, if you can say, Bangladesh's Look East policy from some years ago. And he has, if you like, given it fresh oxygen, starting with the BRICS and BIMSTEC Outreach Summit in Goa in 2016, which we also heard about earlier today. So that, in a sense, gave it fresh impetus and made the objective more clear or apparent. But in the case of Bangladesh and the significance of BIMSTEC for it, well, as we all know, it serves as a bridge for South and Southeast Asia. And in terms of connectivity, there's some excellent linkages within the region and beyond. And both via air, land, well, via land, air, and sea connectivity. So it's an excellent gateway and needs to be taken advantage of. Once BIMSTEC's plans are fully implemented, and hopefully that will happen sooner rather than later, the potential exists obviously to generate massive revenue from transit fees. But also when we get down to the brass tacks, we should look at how it benefits the people. So obviously Bangladesh still has a very small middle class, nothing like what India has, but it's a growing middle class, and we do have a large base of semi-skilled and unskilled semi-skilled and also coming up skilled labor, and a very obviously vibrant and active civil society. We're a land of NGOs and who've done some excellent work from the time of our independence, and that's really helped to propel our growth in those very areas that BIMSTEC wishes to focus on. As we all know, Bangladesh does maintain excellent friendly ties with not just its neighbors, but beyond the region with countries all across the world. And over the course of time, it has gained much respect and admiration for the way it has conducted itself with other countries. And I suppose if one can, give an example about that, the recognition of Bangladesh's rising importance in the regional and global arena may be demonstrated by the fact that there was agreement by member countries that we should host the Secretariat, which we do, and we have a very active Secretary General who took the time to be with us. And we obviously heard from the Secretary General as to the various plans that BIMSTEC has in the pipeline, including expanding the operations of the Secretariat. But a strong Secretariat means a more proactive and dynamic BIMSTEC. So it's important that member countries recognize that and as a result also contribute in terms of money and manpower. And just to give you a few facts and figures, exports to BIMSTEC countries 2 years ago amounted to 28.5 billion. My figures may not be wholly accurate. Maybe the Secretary General has more updated figures or better sources of these figures. But Bangladesh's total imports from BIMSTEC countries increased on average by over $500 million, are currently standing at $1.5 billion. Again, it may be a higher figure for the last fiscal year. And we all know that a framework agreement was agreed in June 2004, and Bangladesh obviously is party to that. But fast forward 14 years, after 20 rounds or 21 rounds of negotiations, not much has happened. So we need to see some concrete progress there. Just to highlight one example of connectivity, because that seems to be, if you like, the recurring or overall theme of regional cooperation and such platforms like BIMSTEC. So this well-known study on transport infrastructure and logistics was done, which a few years ago, which outlined 5 areas. And that's aviation, maritime transport, road development, railways. So this is obviously critical in terms of boosting socioeconomic cooperation and technical cooperation, which is what BIMSTEC is all about. And in the coming years, member states will obviously spend more time due to developing a society which is more based on ICT advancements and planning. As you all know, Bangladesh has a very robust digital economy plan, or digital Bangladesh plan, which has been there since 2009-10. And this is an area which more member countries need to sort of focus on, including Bangladesh, of course. At the time of the BIMSTEC Secretariat launch, I'll just touch on a few other issues which are, if you like, important to Bangladesh, including, for instance, climate change. So during the Secretariat launch, a concept paper was done by the Bangladesh government, or done by Bangladesh, which advocated a framework of cooperation on climate change. And obviously the importance of sustainable development to mobilize collective efforts to deal with the effects of climate change has been highlighted a number of times, as has the issue of energy cooperation. So as you can see here, the potential that exists in the region, Himalayan region, and Bay of Bengal for hydrocarbon. And this will be done, obviously, through bilateral and trilateral consultations, multilateral as well, because many countries and certainly all the BIMSTEC countries are involved. And Prime Minister Hasina also talked about, well, you have the 14 areas that we all know about, but focused on 3 clusters, which were sustainable development, security, stability, and people-to-people contact, which we also heard much about this morning and afternoon. And the issue of counterterrorism has come up, and more, if you like, emphasis is being given in this regard. And as many of you will know, Bangladesh has a zero-tolerance policy against extremism and terrorism, which has been there in place as a policy for the past decade. We are party to all the UN instruments on anti- and counterterrorism, and we also ratified the UN Convention on Transnational Crime. On the right-hand side, you can see the number of measures, bodies, institutions that have been developed over the past decade, dealing with counterterrorism, terrorist financing, and so on. And going back to what the Prime Minister highlighted on the issue of security and counterterrorism, she spoke about it in 2014 at the third summit in Myanmar. And then, of course, as you all know, we hosted the National Security Chiefs or Advisors meeting in Dhaka in March, which was attended by most of the NSAs of the member countries. And then again, just at the most recent summit in Nepal, our Prime Minister talked about the importance of dealing with terrorism in order to have sustainable growth and maintaining peace. And talking about, very briefly about the challenges, BIMSTEC has failed to, if you like, not adequately address or focus on those many opportunities that lie among the member states to boost cooperation. And there's, I feel, a lack of cohesion on certain issues. So obviously, just to highlight or give you a few examples, the issues dealing around the slowness of the agreement on the FTA. And obviously, there are also the issues revolving around guidelines, directions, approaches, methodology, which need to be, if you like, ironed out and dealt with. And when there's also issues of mistrust or bilateral, if you like, disputes or contentious issues, such as the Rohingya refugee crisis or not having full participation in BIMSTEC activities, like the recent exercise in Pune, where Nepal and Thailand only sent observers, then obviously there are, if you like, gaps that need to be addressed. And there's a perception by some quarters that BIMSTEC is seen to be, again, an India-dominated bloc, and that was sort of accusation against India when it came to SAARC. And we all know how the story of SAARC turned out, thanks to two member countries in particular. But again, going back to history, it's important to recall that before partition in 47, only 71 years ago, that intra-regional trade stood at about 20%. And obviously, we all know it's at 5% today. So that in a way sort of defies belief that, rather than coming forward and enhancing cooperation, we seem to have gone backward many steps. But member states do need to undertake, I think, studies on a number of these core issues that can, if you like, instigate debate and also help move forward on those critical areas of energy, trade, climate change, security-related issues as a working agenda for the group going forward. And mentioning the obvious, Bangladesh's geographical location, bridge between South and Southeast Asia, and Bangladesh is quite mindful of it, and so are its neighbors, that it can accelerate the process of economic or regional integration if we tie up with our Southeast Asian friends in particular. And private sector leaders or business and industry leaders have talked about on more than one occasion the need for making BIMSTEC more action-oriented or dynamic. And one example here is developing our coastal shipping lines. And you see, despite our many issues or problems with Myanmar over the years, both countries are interested in boosting trade and investment cooperation, which stands at a very low figure of between 50 and 100 million US, which is really hard to believe. So here you can see that the aim or objective of both countries is to achieve a target of 1 billion by 2020. But first and foremost, you have to resolve those various disputes that are sort of troubling the two countries. And on the way forward, the true potential of BIMSTEC really lies in the hands of the member states, to state the obvious. And it does have to deal with building mutual trust and having confidence-building measures. So the fact that the fourth summit did take place after a gap of a few years or 4 years is a positive sign. But then the summit takes place in Nepal, and then Nepal then fully doesn't engage in the joint military exercises. So that in itself sort of begs the question that, how strong is cooperation among the member states, and how much trust and confidence do they have in each other? So they need to reach a consensus with regard to core objectives and move forward, especially on something like the FTA, which I think would also give it, act as a confidence-building measures. Multilateral donor agencies like ADB and World Bank have a lot of, if you like, interest in funding and supporting sub-regional initiatives like BIMSTEC, and I think that needs to be taken advantage of. And the main issue really has to do with political will and leadership in order to energize and make BIMSTEC dynamic. So certainly Prime Minister Modi's efforts have helped, but that's just one leader, which happens to be the largest South Asian member country. But all the leaders of all the member countries need to have an active participation in making the organization dynamic. And as you can see here in a survey of opinion leaders in Asia, 4 out of 5 leaders felt BIMSTEC should play a more active role. And finally, BIMSTEC members, going back to what I said earlier, do enjoy close commercial, historical, cultural bonds due to their geographical proximity to each other, contiguity. That needs to be wholly taken advantage of, because clearly it's not being taken advantage of. And again, it would be wrong to dismiss the role of SARC here, and obviously we should not see BIMSTEC or other initiatives as being a substitute for SARC, because saying what I said at the outset, it was SARC that really laid the groundwork or foundation for where we are today in terms of BBIN, BCIM, BIMSTEC, and other initiatives. Thank you. I hope all of you are still awake.
Thank you, Faiz, for giving that wonderful account of Bangladesh's perspective in regard to BIMSTEC. Bangladesh, as you know, has been an active player in all regional cooperation mechanisms and has certainly had the distinction of mooting two of the concepts. One is SARC, that was mooted by Bangladesh, and the concept of BCIM came out of the Kunming initiative that also came out of Bangladesh, particularly from CPD, one of the leading think tanks in Bangladesh. So therefore, Bangladesh hopefully will continue to play a major role in BIMSTEC also. We sincerely hope that the current political commitment that is being shown by BIMSTEC member countries will be sustained and continued so that BIMSTEC has a smooth journey ahead, the symptoms of which we are now seeing in the current dispensation. I would also like to say, echo with Faiz, that BIMSTEC is certainly not a substitute for SARC. In terms of South Asia, the only sole platform that we have is SARC, so that process must be sustained and continued. I would also like to say that the BIMSTEC platform should not be ever used as a competing platform for other cooperative mechanisms. It itself has everything positive going on its side, so it must continue to endeavor in that direction. Our next speaker for this panel is Professor Lwin from Myanmar. And Madam, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, everybody. Firstly, I'd like to express my sincere thanks to all responsible persons from ISAS, COSATT, and Stiften for giving me the chance to present my NEMA perspective and our roles in BIMSTEC in this invaluable event in ISAS and US. Firstly, I'd like to present about the Myanmar position in the BIMSTEC. All of you already noticed that Myanmar is located in geostrategic position between South and Southeast Asia region. Myanmar is positioned as a bridging between the India Act East policies and Thailand and ASEAN's Look West policy. Moreover, our country is sharing border with 3 member countries of BIMSTEC, Bangladesh, India, and Thailand. It is a great opportunity to enhance our position of a hub in trade and investment flow in the region. Myanmar has been participating in BIMSTEC since December 1997, and Myanmar takes the leading role in energy and agriculture sectors among 14 priority sectors of BIMSTEC. Regarding Myanmar position, Myanmar is the second largest country in terms of land area and according to data, the GDP and GDP growth rate is 5th position among BIMSTEC countries. In fact, BIMSTEC is a home of almost 1.7 billion people, and the combined GDP is about 3.7 trillion US dollar, and it's account for 4.3% of 4.3% of world GDP. This region is received 3.09% of total FDI and 3.83% of world export, destination, and 4.16% of world import sources. But the data about the intra-regional trade, our intra-regional trade is only intra-regional trade is only 2.83% of our trade in 1997. Now, last year, 2017, our regional trade is only 6% of total BIMSTEC, total trades of BIMSTEC countries. So we can see that how much, in terms of trade, how much our economy are integrated. Among these 7 countries, if we see the data in detail, the largest share of intra-regional trade are from India and Thailand. By comparing with their total trade, their trade in BIMSTEC country is very small portions in their total trade. It also in intra-regional FDI. In this slide, I present about the intra-regional inward FDI of BIMSTEC countries. The largest investor in this region is Thailand, which account for 70% of intra-regional FDI came from the Thailand. The second country is India. It takes about 28%. But we see the data closely. Almost all of the Thailand FDI go to the Myanmar, because 92% of Thailand intra-regional investment go to Myanmar, and it's also about 77% of India intra-regional FDI went to Sri Lanka. So, in this sense, these intra-regional FDI data also not much support on integrations of in terms of FDI in this region. Now, I'd like to move on to our Myanmar position in BIMSTEC. In this slide, I'm present about the top 10 trade partners of Myanmar. As you can see here, in 1997, Myanmar, among top 10 countries, the largest partners of Myanmar trade is China, second is Thailand, and third position is Singapore. India is the 5th position in our total trade volume. But in terms of export, Thailand is the second largest export destination, and India is 5th largest export destinations of Myanmar. For imports, Thailand is the 3rd largest import sources, and 6th largest, India is the 6th largest import sources of Myanmar. Regarding the FDI, in this slide, I present about the top 12 FDI sources of Myanmar. You can see that the largest investors in Myanmar is China. In this slide, we can see Thailand is the 3rd position, and India is the 11th position in FDI inflow to Myanmar. In this slide, I present about the Myanmar export to agricultural export to BIMSTEC countries. Agricultural export account for 13.4% of Myanmar total export to BIMSTEC countries. Almost all, about 90% of our export to Nepal and Sri Lanka are agriculture products, and 50 to 60% of Myanmar export to India and Bangladesh also agriculture products. Only for Thailand, agriculture export to Thailand is less than 1% of Myanmar export. It's also, you may notice that our largest commodity export to the Thailand is the natural gas. So agriculture is the very small portion in our export to Thailand. So now we can look at the Myanmar role in BIMSTEC. All of the member BIMSTEC countries like India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, all growing economies. We can see the GDP growth rate of these countries. Some countries are about 7% in this region. So growing economy means increasing demand for sustained energy supplies and energy security. It is, I think, it is an important agenda for BIMSTEC countries. According to the data, India is the 6th largest energy consumer of the world. Myanmar is has the position in the BIMSTEC lead the energy sector of the BIMSTEC. We can see the opportunity to be mutual beneficial cooperation in BIMSTEC and better commercial cohesion within the regions because of the energy demand and energy sources of our countries. According to the survey data of American associations, one of American associations, our country still possesses the 150 million barrels of crude oil reserve and 10 to 13 trillion cubic feet of natural gas reserve. So it may be a good opportunity for BIMSTEC for mutual beneficial cooperation. Another project related to the energy sector is Thammasat hydroelectric power project in the Children River. If it can complete this project, it may serve the sources of power need for northeast region of the India. Regarding the connectivity issue, for the BIMSTEC, the urgent need is the highway entries of northeast area of the BIMSTEC countries, and it's also important for the profitable economic gateway. Border point are economic gateway of these countries. But one of the issues we have to solve is the infrastructure development of our countries. Till recently, we have lagged behind in the infrastructure development, especially for the transportation sector in our country. One of the projects implemented is the Caledon Multimodal Transit Transport Project. It aims to develop the road and inland waterway from Sittwe ports in Myanmar to Mizoram of India. But all of the projects are still very initiative stage. So as a way forward, we can expect, recently we noticed that previous last month, the BIMSTEC proposed the BIMSTEC master plan on transport connectivity. If we have to realize these plans, we need to incorporate all connectivity projects should be under the framework of this master plan, because we need to integrate all plans like multimodal transport projects or BIMSTEC coastal shipping agreement or something like that. So we need to incorporate all these connectivity projects under the BIMSTEC master plan on transport connectivity. The issue in this area is still very low per capita GDP in this area. So we need to consider, we need to cooperate how to alleviate poverty in this area, to ensure the dignity, to improve the life quality and well-being of our people. Another important issue is security challenges, especially in international terrorism, transnational crime, and drug trafficking. So we need, these issues are critically important for all our BIMSTEC member countries, and we need the collective endeavor to solve these issues. We can see some achievements in our collaboration and cooperation in this area. We are already endorsement and signed on the Convention on Cooperation in Combating International Terrorism and Transnational Organized Crime and Illicit Drug Trafficking in 2009. But it's just signing these conventions. If we can contribute, we can set up the proper controlling mechanism. It may be it may not be practical and not beneficial. Even we sign on these conventions. So we see that the priorities for the BIMSTEC should be poverty alleviation, transport movement, combating terrorism, and preventing cross-border crime. The only way to accomplish this is the cooperation with commitment for mutual beneficial relationship of all member countries. To do so, we also need to consider and promote democratic and rule-based international order for equality and sovereignty. By doing so, we can hope peaceful, and prosperous, and sustainable Bay of Bengal region at that end. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Lwin. I especially would thank you for the statistical analysis that you have given. Particularly, I was very surprised to see the intra-BIMSTEC trade. I was very happy when I saw the total number. But when I saw your statistics breakdown, except for India and Thailand, nobody's trading. The rest of the countries are all in zeros. So I think we have a long way to go. And sometimes it is best to back up our understanding and presentation by statistics, because that speaks the hard truth. I would also like to request you that when we are talking about energy cooperation, maybe we should bring in the aspect of renewables, because we are a region which is rich in renewables, but none of the energy presentations or the deliberations that we are having here today are showing the prospect of renewable exchanges between our countries. So I will also request the Secretary General that if renewables can receive a special attention when we are talking about energy cooperation. Our next speaker on the panel is Professor Sathaporn from Thailand. And sir, you have the floor.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank the organizer for having me here today. The topic that I'm going to talk in the next 20 minutes also is about the possibility of BIMSTEC and ASEAN logistic connectivity with Thailand as a key linkage. So I want to start my talk with the geography of Thailand with respect to these two regional groupings, ASEAN and BIMSTEC. For ASEAN, Thailand has a comparative advantage in terms of location, as the country is located at the center of Indo-China Peninsula and sharing the borders with 4 countries, Myanmar and Laos in the north, Myanmar and Andaman Sea in the west, Laos and Cambodia in the east, and Malaysia in the south. And the entire coastal land of the south of the country surrounded by Andaman Sea and the Gulf of Thailand. So with the strategic location of Thailand, the country can serve as an important gateway for the BIMSTEC to ASEAN. And why Thailand has been enjoying her strategic location in ASEAN, this is not the case for BIMSTEC, as if you look at this map, Thailand is located at the far east among the 7 members of BIMSTEC, and the country share the border with only one BIMSTEC member state, which is Myanmar. So while Thailand can still serve as a very important gateway for BIMSTEC to ASEAN, the mode choice is very critical for the effectiveness and efficiency of the logistic integration within these 2 regions. So next, I would like to reflect the current situation of each mode of transport in Thailand and their possibility of connecting BIMSTEC and ASEAN. I would like to start with the first mode of transport, which is the air transport. At the present time, I would say that air transport is the most effective and efficient transportation mode for BIMSTEC and Thailand logistic connectivity, thanks to extensive air route network centered at the Suvarnabhumi Airport, which is the major airport in Thailand. Now, Suvarnabhumi Airport handle 75 operations per hour. There are 95 airlines operating at the airport, and the capacity has reached up to 45 million passengers per year. And in light of Eastern Economic Corridor, the EEC, which is a 20-year national development strategy, whose objective is to revitalize the existing eastern seaboard, which consists of 3 provinces in the east part of a country, Chachoengsao, Chonburi, and Rayong, which is currently the production base for automobile and electronic goods, electronic products. And the objective of EEC is to revitalize this area to be able to handle next generation industry such as aerospace, autonomous vehicle, and biotechnologies. And with the EEC into the picture, the Thai government has launched several projects to enhance the transportation connectivity with the EEC area, especially the air transport. The first project is the Suvarnabhumi Airport expansion, which will increase the capacity of the airport from currently 45 million passengers per year to 90 passengers per year, or double the capacity. The second project is to expand the Dongmueang Airport, which is another important airport in Thailand, located in Bangkok, from the capacity of 30 million passengers per year to 40 million passengers per year. The next one is the transformation of the Utapao Port, which formerly a military airbase into a commercial airport. And last but not least, the Thai government has approved a plan to develop high-speed train connecting these 3 airports to support the EEC project. With all this air transport infrastructure development, the law of air transport will become more important and will play a very important role in the ASEAN and BIMSTEC logistic connectivity. However, it should be noted that air transport is economically feasible for passengers and high-value time-sensitive products. For other cargo, general cargoes, maritime still a better option, especially in terms of transportation costs. So next, I would like to move to the next mode of transport, which is the waterways. Thailand has 5 major seaports, 4 of which are located in the EEC area, and they are clustered in that area. And there's one seaport in the southern part of Thailand is called Songkhla Port. So all these 5 seaports have one thing in common, that is they all are located on the east side of the country. So for the cargoes from Europe or Middle East, South Asia or the BIMSTEC countries, the cargo need to take the route that go all the way to the Strait of Malacca before getting to Thailand, which incur unnecessary time and cost. Actually, Thailand has a seaport on the west side of the country, which is called Lanong Port in the southern part of Thailand. But because of its limited capacity and the insufficient depth of water at the basin, the port can handle only a small container vessel and would play a minimal role in the BIMSTEC and ASEAN or Thailand connectivity. And with the lack of a deep sea port in Thailand, the government has initiated a project to develop a deep sea port in Myanmar. And this one is called the Y Port. And the project consists of the development of a deep sea port and also the industrial estate, which is expected to be the largest economic zone in the Southeast Asia. And the Y Port comes with other transportation infrastructure development, especially the road and the highway that connect Bangkok to the border of Thailand and Myanmar, leading to the Y Port. This is a picture of the construction site at the Y Port in 2015 and 2016. So upon the completion of the Y Port project, the port can serve as a major maritime and multimodal linkage for BIMSTEC and Thailand, as you can see from the picture, and without relying on the route that passing through Strait of Malacca, and that will shorten the time and reduce the transportation costs for the connectivity between the east and the west of Indochina Peninsula. Anyway, the Y Port, the progress of the Y Port has been very slow in the past few years because of the two host countries, Myanmar and Thailand, could not attract a business partner to invest in the project. So until the project is completely developed, the container flow from BIMSTEC country still need to take the route that passing through the Strait of Malacca. And the last mode of transport that I would like to talk about is the land transport, which are rail and road. So let's take a look at these figures. It's clearly road is the most dominant mode of transport for domestic freight in Thailand, which account for 80%. Whereas rail transport is considered to be the weakest mode of transport, with only less than 2% share. And I would say that the service of the rail transport in Thailand now is quite unreliable and is quite poor because of many reasons, and some of them are aged rolling stock and poorly maintained rail track. And besides, the majority of the rail track in Thailand are single track, which account for 90% of the total railway network. To make the situation even worse, Thailand has no railway connection with BIMSTEC neighboring countries of Myanmar at the moment, which make it impossible to link the cargo from BIMSTEC to Thailand and further to other ASEAN countries by train. Anyway, the Thai government has realized the importance of the rail transport and has come up with many projects, especially the development of the dual track. And this slide shows the sections that being expanded to be the dual track. Still, the section between Thailand and Myanmar is still missing from the plan. So it is out of the question for connecting the freight flow between BIMSTEC and Myanmar and Thailand by train, at least in the 5 or 10 years in the future. There are some other railway improvement project that I would like to mention. And this one is the Thai-China high-speed train, which will connect Thailand to China as a part of a China Belt and Road Initiative. And with the EEC, the 20-year National Development Strategy into the picture, the government has come up with several projects to improve the quality of the rail transport connecting to the EEC region. And this includes a double-track railway from Bangkok to Rayong province, which is one of the EEC province. And also the high-speed train connecting Bangkok to Rayong as well. So clearly, the momentum of the rail infrastructure development in Thailand has shifted in favor of Thai and China connectivity and the support of the EEC project. So the last mode that I would like to talk about is the road transportation. And this slide compare the road network with the rail network. Obviously, Thailand has a very well-developed and well-connected road network. And the road network of Thailand is an integral part of the 3 corridors under the GMS, Greater Mekong Sub-region, which is another sub-regional grouping consisting of 5 countries in Indochina and 1 province in China. There are Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, Vietnam, Thailand, and Kunming province in the southern part of China. And the first corridor, which is the North-South Economic Corridor, stretched from Kunming in China and go all the way and then split into 2 corridors, 2 sub-corridors. One go to Laos, another one go to Myanmar. And then these two sub-corridors merge again in the north part of Thailand and go straight to Bangkok. For the East-West Economic Corridor, it stretched from Vietnam to Laos and to Thailand, and it ends in Molamyai in Myanmar. And the last one, the Southern Economic Corridor, it starts from Cambodia and it starts from Vietnam and then past Cambodia, Phnom Penh, and then to Bangkok. And formerly, this corridor ends at Bangkok, but now with the Y project, the Southern Economic Corridor has been extended to reach the Y port. So it's clearly that once the cargo from BIMSTEC can cross the border between Myanmar and Thailand, the cargo can be effectively and efficiently distributed to other countries in ASEAN using the road network and the three economic corridors under the GMS. So what needs to be done in terms of the road transport enhancement is first the physical and the improvement in physical and institutional connectivity, and the focus must be made upon the India-Myanmar-Thailand trilateral highway, especially the section in Myanmar and India, because the road network in Thailand is well developed. And because of that, the law of Thailand is to work closely with Myanmar to ensure the safe and smooth movement of passenger and freights across the borders. And I suggest the use of a simulation model in the design of the operations and the infrastructure configuration at the borders. And also the principle of trade and transportation facilitation, such as cross-border management, single-stop inspection, and common control area, which appear in the GMS transport agreement, should be adopted and implemented in BIMSTEC as well. And this is the three key borders between Thailand and Myanmar. The first one is on East-West Economic Corridor. The second one is on the North-South Economic Corridor, and the last one, the third one, is on the Southern Economic Corridor. And the movement of passenger and goods crossing these three corridors should be smooth, should be streamlined. And this is the paper that my colleague and I employ simulation technique in the design of the cross-border facility at the Sadao Custom House, Sadao Custom Control and the Immigration Checkpoint. And Sadao is a border between Thailand and Malaysia. So I'm not going to go into detail of this paper. So if you are interested in how to use a simulation in the design of cross-border infrastructure configuration and operations, you can Google for it. It's published in Journal of Transport Policy. And this is how we use simulation to justify various operations and cross-border infrastructure configuration. And we use arena simulation to test and select the optimal operation and configuration. Also, BIMSTEC can follow what GMS has done in terms of trade and transportation facilitation. And this is some part of the GMS transport agreement, especially on the border crossing formalities, single stop inspection, and implementation of common control area where the officers of the two neighboring countries working in the same facility, working side by side, and perform joint inspection on the passenger and the freight. And this can radically reduce the time and cost for border crossing. And this is the first border under the GMS transportation agreement that implement the common control area and single stop inspection. And this border is called Lao Bao, which is the border between Laos and Vietnam. And I took this picture by myself during the study field trip 2 years ago. At the border, in the past there were 2 border stations in each country. After they implement the common control area, the Laos shut down the station and moved their officer to work side by side with the Vietnam officer at the same building. And you can see they're sitting side by side and perform joint inspection, which is make seamless transportation, especially for the cross-border. So I have come to the conclusion for my talk. First of all, I think we still need to enhance institutional infrastructure, especially for border crossing, to ensure that the safe and smooth movement of people and products across the borders. The second one, to achieve the good ASEAN BIMSTEC logistic connectivity, I think the Thai government and Myanmar government should find a way to speed up the development of the wide port, because the wide port will, after the completion, will generate significant trade flows, which will justify the investment of other infrastructure, especially the rail transport on the west side of Thailand. Because now it seems that Thailand gives too much priority to the Thai-China and Look East policy. And last but not least, the possibility of Thailand investing more infrastructure on the west side depend on the role of BIMSTEC in the EEC, the Eastern Economic Corridor, or the 20-year National Development Plan. Because now I can say that the Thai government breathe in, breathe out with the EEC project, and there the government is willing to support and invest in any transportation infrastructure that will boost up the EEC project. All right, I think that's a wrap for my talk. Thank you.